I'm presenting today, Healing the Wounds of the Body, Mind, and Spirit. So, this presentation is sponsored by this grant. For those of you who have heard presentations, it also sponsored Dr. Hughes' presentation and will be sponsoring the two after. This has been a 5.5-year grant that is ending with the intention of increasing the knowledge in geriatric medicine in the state of Michigan. What we have done is actually gone into the undergraduate curriculum and added pieces to the geriatric medicine. Now, in terms of our objectives, we're going to review optimal aging and osteopathic medicine, their definitions, which I've done before. We're going to define and discuss evidence-based alternatives and care interventions used for geriatric patients and funded by the National Center of Complementary and Integrated Health. And we're going to discuss some research findings in mind-body medicine that are kind of unique. Optimal aging, as you may remember, is the capacity to function across many domains, physical, functional, cognitive, emotional, social, and spiritual, to one's satisfaction and in spite of one's medical conditions. These are have been defined by Bates and Bates and Dr. Ken Brummelsmith. In terms of osteopathic medicine, these are more familiar. Osteopathic medicine views the human being as being a unit of body, mind, and spirit in which structure and function are interrelated and integrated. According to Wikipedia, I'm going to give you some operational definitions. You may remember these. I actually put these in my presentation a couple of years ago. There are a few slides that are duplicates, but a lot of the material is new. So the human body is the entire structure: head, neck, trunk, arms, hands, legs, and feet, and all parts of the body are composed of cells. That becomes a little more important in the second part of this presentation. It is the anatomical container of mind and spirit. These are the challenges that we face as we age in terms of impaired taste and smell, vision, multiple medications, cognitive defects, difficulty swallowing, intestinal diseases, end-stage disease. These are the functional pieces, as you've heard with Dr. Hughes' lecture, falls being one of the high ones, mobility limitations. Incontinence will probably be covered by Dr. Wardinger in his next presentation, and in general, increasing chronic disease. In terms of the mind, Wikipedia says it's cognitive faculties, consciousness, perception, thinking. These are characteristics of humans, but may also apply to other life forms. In relationship to the physical body, it is the mind that enables a being to have subjective awareness and intentionality towards their environment. In terms of the spirit, it is incorporeal and is present in all living things. It is the energy or life force and believed to pre-exist by some people in terms of the body, and as Wikipedia defines it, it develops and grows as an integral aspect of the living being. Life energy or life force is how I'm going to refer to the spirit at this point. These are some of the pieces of other cultures, what they call this, and you'll see that in some of the things I talk about. In terms of life script is one of those things that I believe in. Life is a journey from birth to death, hopefully with a lot of good times in between. And we are experienced by many people in our life, and we experience many people in our life, and they have an effect on us. In most cases, the beginning effect is that of our parents and our siblings, and they sometimes affect how we believe we are and what we believe in relationship to ourselves. So the life script becomes one of those things that we carry with us until we have a better understanding of what we feel about ourselves and what we can do about that. We all experience some depression. Hopefully we don't experience dementia. Bereavement is another thing that becomes more of an issue as we age. Substance abuse is all around us these days. You're going to hear much about that tomorrow if you haven't already heard about some of it today. And the pre-death concerns that Dr. Hughes talked about. So I'm going to talk just briefly about NCCIH. Its mission is to define through rigorous scientific investigation the usefulness and safety of complementary and integrative health interventions and their roles in improving health and health care. Scientific evidence informs decision-making by the public, by healthcare professionals, and by health policymakers regarding the use of integration of complementary and integrative health approaches. Every 5 years, NCCIH does a survey on what people are doing as far as their alternative care practices. And in the last one, which was 2012, they found that about 1 in 3 of all adults is pursuing some of the things that are on this list. And 1 out of 6 children is doing the same. So, if you are not thinking that your patients are taking some supplements or they're doing some of the things that are on this list here, you're probably mistaken. Alternative care is increasing in the population, and people are looking for new ways of dealing with their pain and their anxiety. And so these things are open to them in an over-the-counter way or in a way without prescription. So I'm going to talk first about NCCIH and how they view osteopathic physicians. In this definition, they kind of lump us with chiropractors, and they also tend to think that we don't do anything besides spinal manipulation, which is not the case. But this is their definition, so here we go with that. NCCIH is the agency that I'm probably using for the most part because of the fact that they are a portion of the NIH, and they actually can give out about $124 million per year in research funds to investigate complementary and alternative health methods. So much of the different pieces that I've got on some of the things going forward will be related to how they define it, because that is how they give their grants. So I looked at the various studies, and the one that caught my eye at this point was the effects. Sorry, my vision is not what it used to be. And so the effects of comprehensive osteopathic manipulation treatment on balance in elderly patients, a pilot study. Actually, I'm going to just go over this briefly. One of the authors on this is actually speaking at 5 o'clock today, and I'm going to let him talk with you a little bit more about this study. But essentially, they did OMT on 75-year-old patients and above. They split it into a group of 20 and then a control of 20, and tested them in terms of their balance on various factors. And so they found that the OMT treated patients actually improved in their balance. And as I said, Dr. King will be here, and I do know that he is going to speak somewhat about this. So that was the study I wanted to look at in relationship to OMT. In terms of acupuncture, the term acupuncture describes a family of procedures involving the stimulation of points on the body and a variety of techniques. Acupuncture technique has often been studied scientifically, and it involves the penetration of the skin with thin, solid metallic needles that are manipulated or used with an electric stimulator. Practiced in China and other Asian countries for thousands of years, it's one of the key components of Chinese medicine. NCCIH said it is used for chronic pain and has been controversial, and they question whether it is anything more than a placebo. So they do sponsor research going into it and largely see it as an issue for pain control. In terms of the studies, the first two are actually related to NCCIH research. The third one is one that I took a look at after I saw the video that I'm going to show you. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity a couple weeks ago to meet Dr. Junshik Shin for the second time. He was receiving an honorary degree at Michigan State, and he actually was at the AOA a couple years ago, as well as he was at an MOA conference in Grand Rapids probably a year and a half ago. I don't know if any of you saw him at that time. The Jeseng Clinic actually has places in California. They've opened several clinics there. They're doing research with MSU-COM. We have had Korean students that have come over the last few summers for 2 weeks at a time, and we've sent some of our people over there. They are also doing research with a couple other universities, but the whole thing was pretty amazing. He calls it muscle style treatment, in which he uses a form of manipulation in addition to the acupuncture, and it varies depending on what the particular illness or problem that he's dealing with the patient. But pretty amazing. Okay, we're going to move on to meditation. It's a mind and body practice that has long history for use for increasing calmness and physical relaxation, improving psychological balance, coping with illness, and enhancing overall health and well-being. Mind and body practices focus on the interaction among the brain, mind, body, and behavior. There are many types of meditation, most of which originated in ancient religions and spiritual traditions. These are the meditation studies that I looked at, and the one that I wanted to concentrate on is the mindfulness. This was the mission of this study was to assess the effectiveness and mindful-based stress reduction for chronic insomnia and combined depressive or anxiety symptoms of older adults aged 75 years and over in a randomized control single-blind clinical study. Participants included 60 adults aged 75 and over. Participants were randomly assigned for an 8-week period of mindfulness-based stress reduction. They were assessed with an instrument for sleep called the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, and they had a self-rated anxiety scan at the beginning and a geriatric depression scale assessment, and these were taken again as they went forward in the exam. The findings essentially showed there was a significant time by group interaction for their sleep quality index, as in the meditation group did better in terms of their sleep. They also had a decreased in their global score on the sleep test, and among the other group, the study group had an increased improvement in their daytime or decrease in their daytime dysfunction, and it showed that it was beneficial for chronic insomnia in adults, say, age 75 and older. Now, the sleep piece is somewhat important in that there are new studies that actually show that the time that we are sleeping is the time that our body is actually getting rid of some of the materials in our body that create the plaque that has been associated with Alzheimer's disease. So that insomnia is one of the increased risk factors for developing Alzheimer's disease at a later point in time. Moving on to yoga. That is a study. I'm sorry? That study, all of my studies are listed in the biography, which is not all are noted here, but they are in the biography, or bibliography rather, that is online with MOA. So you can find that there. I'm moving on to yoga, and it is a meditative movement practiced with its origins in ancient Indian philosophy. They have said that from NCCIH that it is good for chronic low back pain and generally may reduce pain and improve function, and may have some other health benefits such as reducing stress and improving overall physical fitness, strength, and flexibility. And multiple schools of yoga. These are the studies that I looked at in terms of presenting them to you, and the one I chose was the one related to Parkinson's disease. The objective of this study was to evaluate the effects of specifically designed power yoga programs on bradykinesia, rigidity, muscular performance, and quality of life in older patients with Parkinson's disease in a randomized controlled study in a university laboratory. 26 patients with mild to moderate Parkinson's were randomly assigned to a yoga or a control group. The yoga group was 3 months, incorporating twice weekly sessions of yoga classes, and they obtained upper and lower limb bradykinesia and rigidity scores from the Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale, with 1 repetition maximum and peak powers on biceps curls, chest press, leg press, hip adductors, and seated calf and quality of life index. In terms of the 3-month yoga program, significantly reduced bradykinesia and rigidity and increased muscle strength and power in older patients with Parkinson's disease. And they felt that power training was an effective modality to improve physical function and quality of life for Parkinson's. In terms of next going to Qigong and Tai Chi, again, these were considered to be martial arts in the ancient Chinese, and they are very similar. Actually, Tai Chi is a form of Qigong, and it is dealing with an integration of physical postures, breathing techniques, and focused intentions. And they can either be classified as a martial art, something done for medical reasons, or actually a spiritual type of exercise. And they all involve posturing, a breathing technique, and mental focus. Again, NCCIH agrees with that definition for the most part, and talks of it as moving meditation. These are the studies that I found. I did not find the actual full text articles on these studies, and so I chose to move on with those. They're there for your interest in terms of if you want to go ahead and find some additional information about them. These are the additional complementary and alternative interventions that I found. Those have a few of them added from when I did a presentation 2 years ago, but the NCCIH website has something called A to Z Topics, in which you can go there and look for all of the various types of techniques, as well as certain supplements and other kinds of things, and they will show you information and give you some information further about that particular thing in terms of supplements and particular agents that are there. I want to move now to mind-body medicine, and NCCIH defines mind-body interventions as those practices that employ a variety of techniques designed to facilitate the mind's capacity to affect bodily function and symptoms, included guided imagery, guided meditation, and for other forms of meditation praxis, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, prayer, as well as art therapy, music therapy, and dance therapy. The University of Maryland deals with mind-body medicine and actually says the natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well. And they call that mind-body medicine in a nutshell. It sounds remarkably like some of the things that A.T. Still said. So the next part of this actually deals with some interesting information from the book Super Genes. This book was written by Deepak Chopra and Rudolph Tanzi, and they define mind-body medicine as this way. The mind-body connection is not like a footbridge connecting the banks of a river. It's like a telephone line, many telephone lines, in fact, teeming with messages, and in each message is being received by the entire system. Every cell is eavesdropping on what you think, say, and do. I'm calling this what if medicine, and these are the questions that in the book that I'm asking at this point, and their answer is yes. They say that you can influence your own DNA, that you can influence your own genetic makeup, and that you can exert some control on your aging by affecting the length of your telomeres. So I thought that was pretty amazing stuff. And so in terms of, this is an interesting book and one I suggest that you actually take a look at and read. But Deepak Chopra, it has been an author for a period of time. He's a public speaker. I listened to him at the AOA last September, and actually that's where I got the book and started reading it. He is a prominent figure in the New Age movement. He was trained in India initially and then completed residencies in internal medicine and endocrinology here. He became a chief of staff of New England Memorial Hospital. He actually was the executive director of Sharp Healthcare Center for Mind-Body Medicine until 1996, when he went into his own Chopra Center for Wellbeing. It's actually located as a portion of La Costa Health and Spa area in San Diego, California. He treats, this is what others are saying about him. He believes that human aging is fluid and changeable and can speed up, slow down. He calls part of what he believes quantum healing, and takes this from some of the same principles as quantum mechanics. He has been called a quack. He's been called lots of names because of his alternative approach. And so you need to decide for yourself. Now, Rudolph Tanzi is a PhD. He's the Joseph and Rose Kennedy Professor of Neurology at Harvard University. He's the vice chair of the neurology department at Harvard, and leads the genetics and age research unit at Mass General Hospital. He is known for investigating genetics of neurologic disease since the 1980s, and participated in finding the genetic markers associated with Huntington's disease, and also was a co-discoverer of all of the familial factors for early onset Alzheimer's disease and several other neurologic diseases, and continues to be the leader of the Cure Alzheimer's Disease Genome Project. So what they say is that you may be able to alter your own activity and with meditation or biofeedback. This study is fascinating. This one I was able to get the full copy on. It's entitled Mind Control Transgene Expression by a Wireless Powered Optogenic Designer Cell Implant. It was in the journal called Nature Communications, led by Martin Fusenegger, who has those credentials at this point that I'm not going to read to you. But in his quote in terms of one of the other journals that interviewed him after they completed this study, he said, "For the first time, we've been able to tap into human brainwaves, transfer them wirelessly to a gene network, and regulate the expression of a gene depending on the type of thought." He goes on to say, controlling genes in this way is completely new and unique in its simplicity. So, I had never heard of the game called MindFlex. I don't know if any of you had. It was put out by Mattel, and they were intrigued with it. And apparently there is a helmet that they decided to change into an EEG helmet, and they transmitted the waves with a Bluetooth. And The brain waves in this situation were subsequently turned into an electromagnetic field in a control unit and used to power an implant fitted with an LED lamp illuminating first a cell culture with near infrared light, and second, an implant in the brains of mice. They implanted a small device with an LED light on it, and they then linked it to the production of a specific protein that the mouse would secrete. And in the article they published, they described using the system first on cell cultures and then further demonstrating its viability on mice implanted with this device. Multiple people were recruited as test subjects. They were divided into 3 groups and were asked to control protein expression in the mice by their thoughts. The test subjects were made to concentrate their mind playing this mind flex game on a computer. In the first group, the subjects received only instructions on how to proceed. They achieved a limited amount of results as measured by the concentration of the protein in the bloodstream of the mouse. The second group received the same instruction, but they had been instructed in a form of meditation or complete relaxation, and they actually did better with a higher rate of protein expression as measured in the blood of the mouse. The third group received the same instruction, but additionally were given the use of a method of biofeedback. They were able to consciously turn off and on the LED light implanted in the body of a test mouse. So anyway, this was quite a study and a bit fascinating to me. Chopra and Tansey concluded, all in all, our genome is fantastically nimble assembly of DNA and proteins that is constantly being remodeled in terms of the structure and gene activity. And much of this remodeling appears to be in response to how we live our lives. So here we have the epigenome defined again by Chopra and Tansey, the entire amount of epigenetic modification of the DNA in your body. It is here that genes are get switched off and on. They liken it to a light switch and up and down, much like a thermometer. They bring into play the microbiome, which is a large and diverse population of bacteria, viruses, fungi that occupy every surface of the human body. They estimate 30 trillion bacterial cells living in or on each human being, which is about 1 bacterium for every cell in the human body. And they call these microbes the microbiome. This is further definition by folks at Emory that are actually looking into the microbiome, and the way they describe this as that you are first exposed to the microbiome in the birth canal and later by environmental factors such as diet and exposure to antibiotics, and that the differences in environment and so forth determine what your microbiome is, and that it can vary greatly between individuals, but becomes much like a fingerprint in terms of your own identity. And they're looking at it in their research in cancer as well. The microbiome gut-brain axis also is brought into this, and that is that there is a link between the gut and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves of the autonomic nervous system, including the vagus nerve and what they call the gut microbiota. In terms of, they feel this is a bidirectional neurohumoral communication system, and that it is definitely important in maintaining our homeostasis. And they believe there is interaction between what you do in relationship to putting in your body and in what you eat and so forth, some of the chemicals that are made. The interest in this field was sparked by this study in 2004 that showed that essentially genetically homogeneous laboratory mice were birthed and raised in an antiseptic environment. They showed an exaggerated HPA axis response to stress compared with non-GF laboratory mice, in saying that if they were birthed in the usual way, they would have received the bacteria from their mother that would have changed their stress response. In terms of, again, supergenes, they feel that the gut harbors 100 million neurons, which is more than the spinal cord, and produces 95% of the body's serotonin, and that many of disorders can be linked to anxiety and depression between that and the gut. So we all know that inflammation is the enemy, to most body functions, and in this case, they say it is the enemy to the microbiome. That a fatty, high carbohydrate foods in your diet promote inflammatory substances in the bloodstream. That endotoxins and other harmful molecules are released by these bacteria through the intestinal wall, and that your GI immune system can be triggered by the leakage and produce this inflammation. Then you have inflammation that disturbs blood sugar levels and your insulin response, and they, again, feel that this inflammation may relate to the obesity that can be shown even on a normal diet. Many of these researchers that I looked at link gut inflammation to diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and cancer. And again, the microbiome is your second genome. Telomeres. These are the ends of the chromosomes, and they are a section of DNA called a telomere, which protects the chromosome from unraveling. They are kind of, if you will, protective to a shoestring, much like that little plastic end that you have on it. And so we know that as telomeres get shorter with each new division of a cell, and after dozens of divisions, the protective telomeres become so short that the cell becomes senescent and dies. So these are the lifestyle changes for radical well-being. And I don't have a lot of time here. All of these are in the handout, which you can access through the MOA website. I'm going to go through quickly. These are some of the easy changes that Chopra talks about in relationship to making a difference in your diet. These are the harder ones, and he includes this in each of the things. This is the one that he can't prove experimentally. These are the inflammation-reducing foods that he recommends that you eat. And this was a study that I found interesting. It was done at the University of California, San Francisco, where mice were on a vegan diet, and so their microbes were measured in their feces. And within 3 days of eating a high animal fat diet, their intestinal microbes changed significantly. Also, there was another study of pregnant women in Gambia. Gambia and much of Africa has a rainy season and a dry season, and the dry season becomes famine. And they found definitely that pregnant women during the famine showed lower vitamin B and folic acid levels in their blood. Babies born in famine with lower birth weights showed a greater likelihood of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And then these results were correlated with epigenetic changes between the groups. So meditation was one of the things that Chopra felt was very significant. These were the easy changes to change your life. The hard ones, were a little bit different. And, this is the stress. I'm sorry. Stress, actually, we know that with stress, we increase the amount of cortisol that we secrete, and that then becomes more of an issue in terms of our daily stress. This is particularly meant for physicians. So all of these are in the things that I have put up in terms of the slides, because I am running out of time. And since I'm the moderator, I have to try and do my best to stay on time. But I was quite fascinated by a lot of this information, and I encourage you to read this book. The sleep piece also was one of the things that they discussed in terms of the same type of study that I was quoting earlier. These are the positive things that you can employ in your life. These are the things that are negative, that decrease what they feel is your longevity. These are the pieces that they see in people who have a high emotional IQ. This I will try and share with you a little bit. They did some work at Ohio State by this particular researcher, and in their situation, they found that people who were under chronic stress, and the group that they chose to measure in terms of chronic stress was a group of people who were actually taking care of Alzheimer's disease patients and doing that on a regular basis. And in their study, they estimated that the chronic stress that was experienced decreased their lifespan to an extent of 4 to 8 years. So these, again, are some of the studies. This goes back to Dean Ornish and Elizabeth Blackburn. And the second study is one that was done at Chopra, that they actually gave this group of 64 healthy women a stay at La Costa at the Institute. I want to get on that list. So this was a 2014 study. Some of the group were in intensive meditation. The remaining group were just vacationing. They did experience what they called a vacation effect, but in the meditation group, they did find that the biomarkers that they were checking were markedly different between the two groups. I'm not going to go read them, but these pilot studies have led to a project that is included with 7 research facilities that they're looking at the effect of diet, yoga, meditation, and massage on the body, mind, and spirit of their subjects. So this is more than a pilot study at this point. So I recently, heard someone quote this. It wasn't Dale Carnegie, but they gave him credit. And, we're all looking for life changes. And I guess life changes are kind of how you define them. Success is getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you get. And so I leave you with the body heals with play, the mind heals with laughter, and the spirit heals with joy. So I wish you play, laughter, and joy, and that you find love, because it is one of the things that makes a difference in your life. Thank you.